What if the secret to success wasn't just talent or hard work, but unshakable confidence? Welcome to Grasp Confidence, the podcast where visionary thought leaders, speakers, and entrepreneurs unlock the mindset and strategies for lasting success. I'm your host, Tara LaFon Gooch, CEO, two-time best-selling author, and international TEDx speaker, and I can't wait to help you step into the most powerful version of yourself. Let's dive in. You've seen him on Ozark, Stranger Things, and Homeland. You've heard his voice in national campaigns for Coca-Cola, Ford, and McDonald's. But behind the scenes, Brian LaFontaine has spent over 3 decades mastering more than just his craft. He's mastered the art of presence. As a seasoned actor and sought-over voiceover artist, Brian knows what it takes to command a room, even when no one sees you. His career spans television, stage, commercial, voice work, and he has a real passion in helping others find their voice too. In this episode of Grasp Confidence Podcast, Brian will open up about performance under pressure, overcoming rejection, and why authentic connection always trumps perfection. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hi. Wow, that is an amazing opening and introduction. I mean, who wrote that? I didn't send you that.
It was me. I'm a big fan, Brian.
I love that.
You
I
can
would
steal it.
do that for me all the time.
You can steal it, absolutely.
What's happening? Thanks for having me.
Well, you and I, we met each other. I thought it was so ironic, right? So we met each other as TEDx speaker coaches for TEDx Sugar Creek Women. You're in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm also in North Carolina. I thought it was so funny when I looked at the roster to see who were the coaches and speakers. And your last name is LaFontaine. My maiden last name was LaFon. I said, what are the odds? What are the odds?
No, I felt the same way. I was like, what?
You're like, this person's copying my name.
Yeah. Well, as you could probably imagine, I've been asked this question a number of times over the course of my career if my last name is a stage name.
Ah.
Is that a stage name? And I'm like, I'm not that smart to come up with something like that. So no, that's my real name. That's my real name.
I love it.
In the voiceover business, there's a very well-known voiceover actor who is no longer with us, whose name was Don LaFontaine. And Don LaFontaine was the movie trailer guy. He was the movie trailer voice guy. All the jokes that you hear, all the people who parody that, they're all copying him. And his last name happened to be LaFontaine. So when I started to move into the voiceover part of the business, same thing. You're like, are you related to Don LaFontaine? And I'm like, I don't think so. No, I don't believe so. But I got that question all the time.
Well, maybe it gets you in the door at least, Sometimes that's all I do.
Believe it's been working for me so far.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. Well, I wanted to bring you on this show today because I was just so thoroughly impressed with the way you coached speakers. And it's so interesting because we have completely different, approaches and things like that. But I saw, the way you coached people and it was just transformative. You could take somebody who had a lot of nervous energy and help them deliver something with confidence. You helped with stage presence. You helped with just the embodiment, I feel like, of what it takes to be a really solid speaker, which is not easy. Because a lot of people that, were on our group as speakers, they were new to this. And a lot of them hadn't really spoken on stages that much. So I can't imagine how hard that must have been. But you made it look so easy.
Well, I mean, to my advantage, I have been working with inexperienced performers for years. And that's the goal ultimately, is to get them to that point where they can give a performance. Aside from working with people in public speaking over the last few years, prior to that, for the 20 years before that, I've been working with actors and actually coaching them as well. And while actors are more immersed in the art of performance, you would probably, I don't know if you'd be shocked or not shocked at how lazy they are and how they just assume that, oh, it's just going to show up. The performance will be there. So that when they come to me to help them with auditions or for coaching, they'll walk in the door having done the least amount of work possible. And I have to pull a rabbit out of a hat in that moment, in that session that we have together to try and give them a performance that they can go and use in the audition, or actually that we record in that audition within that half an hour time frame, that gives them at least an opportunity to be considered. So I've had to learn how to work really, really quickly and be able to communicate in kind of a shorthand sort of way. It's interesting that you asked that question because I've never said this out loud in this way before, but apparently that's a skill that I acquired through doing this, is being able to work with people pretty quickly and kind of getting to the heart of things, seeing right away where their I want to say weaknesses are, but just more of like where their ticks are, where their pitfalls are, the things that they're struggling with, where the obstacles are. But at the same time, I can also see very, very quickly what it could be. I mean, I'm visual in that sense, where that first workshop that you and I were a part of together, the one that I was leading, every one of those women that got up there for the first time to even stumble through their talk, wherever it was at that point, I could already see where this could go. And that's where I was trying to lead them over the following 3 months. And, I feel that we were fairly successful in helping them get there.
Yeah. That's that is such a beautiful quality to be able to see the diamond in the rough, right? To see past the lack of training, the lack of know-how, the lack of just performance, and to see what something could be. It takes a really trained eye, and, um, I believe that you are an absolute expert at this because I've seen it firsthand.
Thank you.
The ability to take that person and really see the potential is huge. I kind of have a similar, eye, but for the language.
Mhm.
Right? And I like to see someone's story and then it's like you know what it could be with just some refinement, right?
Yes.
It's so beautiful to take somebody on that journey. So, I want to talk a little bit about you as well because, your opening said a lot, right? Look, you've been involved in all of these campaigns in huge companies from Coca-Cola to Ford, on TV in Ozark and Stranger Things. But Brian, was it always this way? I would love to hear a little bit of your story and how you came to this point.
No, it was not always this way.
It's never this way, right?
No. I mean, while I was always I guess the performer in my family, I was the dinner table comedian as a kid. And I was a fairly outgoing and I'll say popular kid, meaning that I had friends. Now I wasn't this introvert who was just lonely and quiet and by himself. But at the same time, I wasn't the guy who was like, everybody back up, watch me. So I had just as many problems with, experiencing stage fright and um anxiety and all those things that, any human deals with, butterflies. But, you know, like, I guess there was a sign when I was in kindergarten. Um, so the year was 1976, children. The year of our bicentennial. And this is crazy. Like, I remember this happening, but I don't remember it other than the stories that my mother would tell. So it was 1976. It was the year of the bicentennial, and I was in kindergarten at the time. And our elementary school did a whole like bicentennial production, and I was Paul Revere, and I had to deliver a like one-page speech to the entire student body and staff and everybody there, and I nailed it like word for word. Didn't miss a beat. Nope, got up there. I remember my mom going over it with me, kind of like day in and day out rehearsing it. And I'm sure I was just on autopilot that they just, led me up there, put me up there. It's like they flipped the switch or pulled the string and I just went, and then, and said everything the way that it was rehearsed, completely disconnected. But apparently, like people were going like, who is this 6-year old who just stood in front of the entire school and did this monologue, just recited it and didn't miss a word and didn't look scared or whatever. I don't know if that was, the beginning of something because trust me, there are a lot of other, normal pitfalls along the way. Um, but it's just something that's built up over time. I started doing stand-up comedy when I was 20 years old. And that's the scariest form of public speaking and performing that you could ever do. I don't care what anybody says. I'll argue with you all day long because you go out there with one objective and one objective only, and that's to make people laugh. You're not just there to inform them or to share an idea with them. You are there to make them laugh. And if you do well, it's because of you. If you fall on your face and die 1,000 deaths, it's because of you. It is the loneliest place to be, and everything it's up to you. Whether you sink or swim. So I had some success doing stand up. So that certainly gave me some confidence and some stage presence, to know that I could handle myself in front of an audience to an extent. But a lot of it was really just, you build it up over years like anything else. It's a skill. The more comfortable you get, the more experiences you have, the more times, you fail where things don't go over well and you try to rebuild from there. Go, all right, how can I make this better? Because stand-up led me into acting, and I fell in love with acting. It was something that I'd always wanted to do since I was a child, and I never thought that it was a reality to try and pursue it. So when I finally got the chance to pursue it after I graduated from college, it turned out that I kind of had a knack for acting, and at the same time, I had a love for it. I had a passion for it. So that's only going to help. I wasn't afraid to get on stage and tell a story when someone gave me the story to tell. It's obviously much more vulnerable for you to share your own story. And that's one of those things that just kind of happened over time where I had to realize that it was about me sharing more of myself and knowing that that was the greatest thing that I had to offer was just me, my take on things, the way that I thought about things, how I looked at certain situations, how I felt in certain situations, and letting the audience truly see that most authentic version of me, because that's the only thing that I could bring to the work that would separate me from every other actor who was trying to get that same job. When I audition for something, it's no joke or no exaggeration. It's me and 1,000 other people.
Yep.
That's not an exaggeration. So how are they going to choose this one person? I don't know what they want. There's a very general, broad idea of what they're asking for. In most cases, they don't know what they're looking for. So the only thing that I can do is bring myself to it and let them know that if you hire me, this is what you're going to get. And if you want something else, then you want somebody else, and that's okay. And those are things that you can only learn over time. It's not the people who pick that up quicker or faster than I did, the ones who were probably the superstars and the celebrities. But that's just something that I had to learn over the course of my career. And it's transferred into so many other aspects. So that's why it made so much sense when I started working with people in public speaking. To me, there's no difference between when you take the stage as a keynote speaker and me taking the stage in a play or, auditioning or on set doing a scene from a movie. There's absolutely no difference. The approach is the same. The intention is the same. The craft and the process behind it is exactly the same.
Yes, I love that. It's not quite the same as TEDx, but it's similar. TEDx is increasingly competitive
Yeah.
right now. And I tell this to speakers who are applicants that, there could be 500 other applications. So, how are you going to differentiate yourself? How are you going to show up, right? Compared to everyone else? If we don't distinct ourselves and find a way to, niche down and, make a brand of one essentially,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
you're going to continue to be overlooked. So it's really important in acting and speaking and otherwise that even if you're just applying to a job, there's jobs at Microsoft right now that I'm sure have 5,000 applicants, right? So you have to be able to distinguish yourself in some kind of a way and let what I like about it too is that when you show up authentically,
Mhm.
which is what you're saying, but being a consummate professional at the same time. There's a huge difference
Right.
between people that really understand the craft, the stage, whatever it is, and people that are just there to self promote.
Yes. Yes. Especially in this time, like, here you and I are in two different locations, and we are both speaking, and we have this medium, we have this platform. This is accessible to everybody else in the world right now, too. So if everybody's speaking, if everybody's got a platform and trying to use it in some way, then again, like you said, what's going to separate you from everybody else to try and stand out? Otherwise, it just all becomes the same level of noise, and we're all just doing our thing, and there's no differentiation between anything. Um, so that's when, to me, once again, it goes back to that authenticity, which we hear a lot about in the professional world now. Authenticity is a big buzzword. And just like anything else, some people are better at it than others. A lot of people are practicing authenticity or attempting to practice authenticity. But with all due respect, a lot of people still don't know how to be authentic. So I feel like they're trying to practice something that they don't quite grasp yet. Um, and it's one of the things that I've absolutely realized on this exploration in public speaking and as a public speaking coach is that my 30 plus years as an actor has been steeped in vulnerability and authenticity. So while I felt like I didn't have any skills that were applicable to the professional world when I first started pursuing this, because I was spent all my time in show business, my experience in vulnerability and authenticity is more than what I have more experience than most people in any profession, and it's needed now more than ever, I feel, in throughout the entire professional spectrum.
100%. I could not agree with you more. Especially in this age of AI right now, when, you look at somebody's profile on social media, are they even a real person? Right? Because there's a whole industry booming right now for just that.
That's crazy.
And it is crazy to me. And, um, you look and you compare yourself, and you and I were talking offline before this show started about the constant comparison trap that people are in. They're comparing themselves to things that may or may not even be real. But something else you said is really important that some people are trying to practice authenticity, but they don't even maybe know who they are yet. So it's not even coming across as authentic. And I think, the first step to authenticity is clarity. It's getting really clear on who you are, not who you want to be, not who your mom or dad think you should be, not who society expects you to be. Who are you? And, one of those ways you can do that is what do I believe in? What are my core values? What do I align myself with? Right? What's important to me?
Right.
These foundational questions I feel often get overlooked. Again, I think about entrepreneurship, especially. We're drawn to shiny things a lot, right? The latest system or gadget or program or whatever, but we don't do the foundational elements first. And I've seen this time and time again. No amount of system or strategy or shiny thing can ever make up for a foundational element that is not built. What do you think about that?
Mm. Well, yeah. I mean, sh- shiny things fade. Um,
Yeah.
all those things that yeah, we were talking about this. All those sort of superficial things. While I don't think that there's anything wrong in wanting those things or being attracted to them, but using those things as the definition of who you are, or sort of as this there's attachment to it that is part of your identification,
Yeah.
then yeah, because I mean, well, one, it's an outside source. It doesn't actually come from you. It's not an actual representation of you. I don't think that there's anything that can come from the outside that can truly be an authentic part of anyone's, you know, personality or spirit. Um, you use the word clarity, and I think that there's a very very fine line between or strong connection between clarity and vulnerability.
Mm.
You know, yeah, being clear on who you are for sure, but also being willing to share that with someone. I to me that's the overwhelming sort of crux is that you can be clear on who you are, but if you keep it to yourself,
Mm.
then it doesn't make any difference. You
Absolutely.
know, so you have to take that next step and let people see and share with people that you know who you are and you know what's on your mind, or you know what you have to share, or you know what your weaknesses are, and you know what your strengths are. When you and I were talking after the TED event, one of the things that you specifically said to me was, I know what my lane is, and my lane is not to mess in your lane.
I have
It
no interest.
look vice versa, but I mean, again, for you knew that, but
Mhm.
to express it takes it a step further, and it gives me the opportunity to connect with you more and to have an even deeper level of appreciation and respect for you. There's to me there's no substitution for that. I know that we tend to talk about vulnerability and being seen as weakness, but I've never ever experienced that before in my life ever. You want to go back to the whole TEDx experience. The reason also why I took to working with all these women, so passionately is because one, as well as I do, stepping on that stage is one of the most vulnerable things that you can do. Stepping in front of an audience is one of the most vulnerable things that anybody can do. So we both understand why there's all that anxiety and pressure and self doubt and imposter syndrome that goes along with it. But at the same time, they were all stepping up to share a specific message. Not one of those women did I ever get the sense that they were going, look at me. They were trying to truly share something that was important to them and that they were passionate about. And I could feel that from them. Even as scared as they were to get those first few words out of their mouth, I could feel it already that what they were talking about was important to them and there was a reason why. And for me, that's all I need to give you a chance to be like, tell me more. I know you're scared. I know you're freaking out right now, but you you're 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 sharing this with me for a reason. You stepped up to this for a reason, and I want to hear more. You got
Absolutely. Yeah. I think of it as a responsibility that we have. If you have a story that can change lives or even better yet, save them, because there are stories out there that can save lives,
yeah.
then you have a moral obligation and social responsibility to share it. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. My story was not easy to share. It was very hard to share, and you go through all of the usuals, right? The doubt, the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of being ostracized or not understood. But what I have found is the exact opposite that happens, right? I had way more opportunities come to me afterwards. I went from being afraid to empowered.
Mhm.
And because of all of these things, I could really help people. One of my favorite comments on my TEDx talk was from a viewer who said that she was grappling with childhood trauma for 30 years.
Mhm.
She watched my talk. She started practicing gratitude. She said it changed her life, and she no longer looks at the past with the same lens and has overcome childhood trauma. Now, this was 30 years in the making. That means I had a social responsibility to share that message because it literally helps someone. There's 500 something comments there, but if you go towards the bottom, that comment is there. And That to me says exactly why I do what I do and why I shared what I shared. It would not be responsible for me not to share it if it could help somebody else. And I believe everybody has a story that could change lives.
Yeah. I mean, I while I struggle with this, I'm a big fan and believer in the ripple effect, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
These things that, again, we strive so much for the perfection and, to be seen and to be successful. And when those things don't formulate as fast or necessarily in the package or the shape that we thought they would, we, either think that we failed or we're just, not doing it right or whatever it might be. And I often have to get reminded of the ripple effect, and you have no idea what these other things are creating. Exactly what you're talking about. I mean, to me, that's the ball game. That's worth the price of admission right there. I talk about it when I do give talks and run workshops. It's if I can just, and it's cliche and as cheesy as it sounds, it's like if I can just have it reach one person or make an effect, have an effect on one person, then again, yeah, it's my responsibility to do that. I use this. You've been practically quoting me from my website without realizing it. I use this on all of my materials. Is that everyone has a story, and everyone's story is worth hearing. And I absolutely do believe that. I absolutely believe that there is an audience somewhere for everyone's story, um, where somebody needs to hear it, and it. We do have a responsibility to share it. One of the examples that I can share with you is that I spoke to a coaching group earlier in the year or back in the fall, I think it was. And the guy who was running the group, a good friend of mine, really nice guy.
Mhm.
And it was all through Zoom, it was all virtual. And he wanted me to come on and, talk about public speaking and do a little workshop. And he had 7 people on the entire call, and 4 of them had their cameras off. And he was apologizing to me before he started. And he was like, "I'm sorry, man." He's like, "Usually we have a lot more people than this, and I'm just not exactly sure what's going on." And I had that brief moment of like, "All right, this is going to be a dud." And then I was able to flip it
Mhm.
because he told me, he's like, "Just so you know," he said, "we record these and we put them in our library so that people who couldn't come can go back and watch them after and whatever." And I was like, "Yes, thank you for that reminder." And I ended up doing it as if I was talking to a room full of people,
Yep.
because you have no idea who's going to see it. Even if it's one person, that one person showed up to hear what I had to say. And if they can get something from, my expertise or my experience, then it doesn't matter if it's one person or 1,000 people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a good reminder for all of us, really. We all need to hear this.
Yeah.
Brian, so inspired today by our conversation. Where can people learn more about you? How can somebody work with you? And what is the best place to connect with you?
You can find me through my website at brianlafontaine.com. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. Or you can just email me at brianlafontainecoaching@gmail.com. And I am available for private coaching and group coaching and, you know, corporate events, all of those fun things. It would be a pleasure to just hear from and connect with anyone.
I love that. I highly recommend Brian as a speech coach. Guys, I did not walk on the TEDx stage by myself. I had a coach as well, and there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean that you're not a great speaker. In fact, the best speakers have coaches. And a lot of events don't even hire speakers if they don't have coaches. This is true. A lot of bureaus won't even sign on speakers if they don't have a coach. So you need to keep this in mind because that's a professional standard that we all have. If you want to take this into the next professional level, I highly recommend having a coach on your corner. And even if you're not a professional speaker, even if you're somebody that's in the corporate arena and you're an executive and you want to deepen the executive presence that you have, your ability to communicate internally with your team members, again, highly recommend working with a speaker coach for that reason. Why take the chance when you could connect deeper? It's so much easier and more proactive approach to hire somebody who is an expert like Brian. So, highly recommend. Brian, thank you so much for being a guest on today's episode of Grasp Confidence Podcast. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a review. And let me know your favorite takeaway from Brian. We will catch you on the next episode. Take care.